Hey there, future teacher, and welcome to this Praxis 5017 workbook lesson. My name is Elliot. I'm going to help you get prepared for this exam. This video is proudly presented by teacherpreps.com, and if you're the type of student who A, needs to pass the Praxis 5017 exam, and then B, benefits from active learning, you're going to want to download this workbook and make sure that you follow along as you watch the video. All right. We're going to be going over all of the key terminology that you're going to want to know in order to pass the questions on this Praxis 5017. Specifically, this is the science lesson. So if you are preparing for the other content categories, I've also created videos about those for this Praxis exam. Let's start off with the curriculum and planning. I'll be reading this, and then as you can see, there are blanks here, and we're just going to be filling those out together. All right, so first off is Domain 1, curriculum planning, and let's talk about the rationale for science within elementary education. All right, so we need to complete this rationale. Now, the primary goal of elementary science education, it is not rote memorization, right? But instead, it's fostering these two terms that your Praxis administrators are going to want to see from you, demonstrate that you believe and understand this. So the first one is scientific literacy. So let's just write this out, scientific literacy. Okay, so again, it's not about rote memorization, but it's about really fostering an understanding of the scientific process, right? Observing, collecting data, forming hypothesis, all of that good stuff. And then the second is kind of what I was just kind of mentioning, but just said in a different way. These are inquiry skills. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to write critical thinking or inquiry skills. Both would be sufficient, but this is the type of mindset that you're going to want to have while taking this exam. So thinking, critical thinking. Okay, nice. Let's keep it going. All right, so we're going to go next to a practice test question, and this one starts off right here. A teacher attempts to plan a lesson where students are expected to memorize abstract molecular formulas for water and carbon dioxide. And then the question asks, why is this approach pedagogically unsound? Okay, so just as we mentioned right here at the top, the goal is not rote memorization. So when I see a word like memorize, I know that I'm going to be looking for something that's not like that. But instead, what we want to do is foster a whole learning experience where we connect the scientific skills with the students' other core curriculum subjects like math, social studies, physical education, language arts, all that good stuff. So let's take a moment here and read the 4 answer options. Select the one that you think is most appropriate, and then in just a moment, I'll come back and we can identify the correct solution together. All right, so the question again is, why is this pedagogically unsound? Is it A, it requires expensive materials not found in most classrooms, or B, it focuses on process skills rather than final products, or C, it violates the principles of developmental appropriateness, or D, it integrates too many mathematical concepts at once. Now, these, students we're talking about elementary education here, and this is just simply not correct for young learners' cognitive development in order to just memorize abstract formulas. You remember, what we want to do is provide them with concrete sensory experiences in order for them to learn the material best. All right, so for that reason, I'm going to go with answer option C. Let's keep this going. Our next section is all about interdisciplinary relationships, and it looks like we have a little matrix where we're asked to identify the subject areas. So remember that there are 5 different subject areas that you will be tested upon for completing this Praxis 5017 exam, and these are the 5 subject areas. So take a moment here and read each of the descriptions, and then go ahead and fill in which subject or subject area that belongs to. So let's go ahead and read the first activity. So measurement, data collection, graphing, analysis, that would be math or mathematics. Next up, we have science journaling, reading, informational text, vocabulary. What would that be? That would be language arts, or I'll put English, language arts, and reading. Next up, history of science, science tech, and geography. Remember, this is the science lesson, and what we're being asked to do right now is how a teacher can kind of weave together other subjects with science. So that's why it says science, tech, and history of science. But when I see history, I think, of course, social studies. All right, next up, let's see what this says. Hypothesis testing, lab experiments, and inquiry. That would be the actual content category or subject area that we're talking about in this lesson. That's science. And then we have all of these, and that to me looks like the physical education, or I'll put PE. All right, let's keep this going. We have another practice test question, and this one reads, which activity best demonstrates the integration of mathematics into a third grade science unit on weather? Again, take a moment and read all 4 of the answer options. Use that brain of yours to activate the the knowledge that you've learned so far about elementary education to select the correct response. All right. Is it A, reading a fictional story about a rainy day, B, measuring and graphing weekly rainfall amounts, C, drawing pictures of different types of clouds, or D, the history of major hurricanes? All right, so math integration in science, it often involves data collection and analysis. And so when I see measuring rainfall, let's see here, measuring rainfall, that to me sounds like math, and then also creating graphs, that would be data representation. These are all core mathematical skills. For that reason, I'm going to select option B as the best answer. All right, next up, we are moving right along to domain 2. This is instructional design, another important and key part of the Praxis 5017 exam. So we have these 3 different concepts right here. And as I complete the workbook, you're, of course, following along with me. Try to complete each of these 3 blanks before I announce the answer. All right, so what we want to do here is to identify the 3 major cross-cutting frameworks based on their definitions. And let's just do this one by one together. So observing repetition in nature, think here like moon phases, in order to make predictions. So when I see this word repetition, what I'm thinking is patterns. So patterns. All right. And next up, we have understanding boundaries. A change in one part affects the whole. That would be systems and system modeling. So systems, if you watched my presentation study guide on this Praxis 5017 exam, you'll remember that I had a slide all about the importance of systems thinking for this test. Okay, next up, matter and energy are not created or destroyed. They flow through systems. That part of this would be what's called energy and matter. Energy and matter. All right, nice. Let's go on and down, and I can see that we have a practice test question again. So let's read that starting right here. A teacher uses a terrarium to facilitate a unit on ecosystems. Question asks, what is the primary pedagogical purpose of this model? Take a moment to read the answer options, and then in just a second, I will identify the correct solution. All right, is it A, to allow students to observe system inputs and outputs, B, to provide a perfect replication of the natural world, C, to eliminate the need for outdoor field trips, or D, to teach students how to care for household pets? All right, so models are used in science in order to, simplify complex systems so that we can study them. And a terrarium would allow students to observe such interactions, and we can think inputs and outputs. And for that reason, I would go with answer option A. Is that what you got too? All right, let's keep it going. Now we're moving on to what I call the 5E instructional model. Excuse me, not that I termed that, but I was just, again, recalling the presentation study guide that I created. And this also, these 5 stages were listed on that. So this, in this activity, we're asked to read these definitions and then provide the corresponding term to each stage. All right, so let's go ahead and read the first description. This reads, the teacher piques interest, activates prior knowledge, and asks driving questions. So remember, the very first stage, the way that I put it in the video study guide was that we, as effective teachers, we give a hook to the, to engage the learner. So the first step is to engage. And next up, students interact with, sorry about this. If you're wondering what that is, it's supposed to be an arrow. Okay. Next, students interact with materials, test predictions, build common experience. So specifically, hands-on stage. After engagement, we want to provide our students with the tools in order to explore. All right. Next up, students articulate understanding. The teacher introduces formal vocabulary and concepts. So after the students get to explore, they start asking some questions. Then we provide them with some explanations. And hopefully they can provide us with some explanations too. Next stage reads, the students apply new knowledge to new contexts or problems in order to deepen their understanding. So after some explanation, the fourth stage is to elaborate. And this is a great time, a good stage to see who has a good grasp of the content knowledge that you're teaching in the class, where students can elaborate on what they've explored and explained, probably to their peers or in small groups. All right, stage 5, teacher assesses student understanding, students self-assess. And when students self-assess, that is what we call the evaluative stage. So evaluate. Here we go. Nice job. Here we have another practice test question to get our brains moving. A class is beginning a unit on magnetism. Sounds fun. Which activity should occur first in the instructional sequence? So what should the teacher do first? Take a moment to read answer options A through D, and then push play when you're ready. All right, A reads, the teacher defines magnetic poles and fields. B, students read the textbook chapter on magnets. C, students explore with magnets to generate questions. And D, the teacher demonstrates a complex experiment. Okay, so although it might be kind of fun to demonstrate a complex experiment and also kind of fun to watch it, that wouldn't be the first step, right? What we'd want to do is have the students to explore with the tools, in this case, magnets that they're using. All right, next, let's go on to section 3, all about tools and critical thinking, specifically inside the reference of elementary science education. All right, let me just zoom out here. We have 2 different terms that we need to fill in. In this case, this definition says using 5 senses to gather data, and this one is an explanation or interpretation based on data. So these are 2 different but important terms. The first one is observation. All right. And secondly, we have inference. We'll be asking students to take what they read and then infer based off what knowledge they have and what they learned. So inference. Excuse me, I don't think I wrote that correctly. One second here. While I'm just looking at this, I'm thinking I missed something. So let me just go back a little bit. All right, here again, inference. Let me try that again. Inference. There we go. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to write and speak at the same time. Okay, practice test question 5. Here we go. Student groups performing an experiment obtain results that contradict the expected outcome described in the textbook. How should the teacher respond? Read the answer options and select the best response. Let's read this together. Is it A, tell the students to redo the lab until they get the right data? B, guide students to analyze variables that may have caused errors? C, provide the students with the correct data to use for their report? Or D, skip the analysis section and move to the next lesson? All right, so science, remember, it's all about analyzing data and kind of, including results, even if they were unexpected. So, quote unquote, wrong data provides just a teaching moment, right? It's not about being right. It's about learning this. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with answer option B. Feels like the best response the teacher could provide here. We are really cooking. So thanks so much for watching, and let's keep this going and get you completely prepared for this exam. So we're moving on to life science. This is domain 3 of the Praxis 5017. And we're starting this life science section off about organisms. We know that plant and animal cells differ. And so what we're asked to do here is to say how. So regarding the cell wall, remember that the plant has, so check mark, has a cell wall, whereas the animal does not. And then as far as chloroplasts, again, the plant has chloroplasts, which the animal, it is absent, so it does not. All right, practice test question 6. Here we go. Students viewing a cell under a microscope observe a rigid rectangular shape and green internal structures. They can conclude this is a, so if they found, if they're looking at a cell under a microscope and there was a rigid rectangular shape and green internal structures, that would more than likely be a plant cell. All right. Remember, rigid rectangular shape is caused by the cell wall, and that green structure, which is right here, this green internal structure, that would be the chloroplast. All right, moving on, we are going to the second section here, talk about life cycles, the stages of each, specifically metamorphosis. All right, so recall that with metamorphosis, there's complete and there's incomplete. And so you're going to want to know each of the difference, and we are asked to list that out for a butterfly, which has complete, and a grasshopper, which has incomplete. So you're going to recall from my PowerPoint presentation that I gave for the study guide video of this Praxis 5017 that for complete, it starts with the egg, it moves to the larva, from there it goes to the pupa, and finally it becomes an adult. Okay, whereas incomplete only has 3 stages, still starts with egg. So remember, both have egg. Now the difference here is the second stage, which this is a nymph. And finally, the third stage is the adult. So the first stage and the last stage are the same, but these middle stages differ. Okay, let's keep this going. We have a practice test question, and we're being asked about genetics. Which of the following human traits is considered an acquired characteristic rather than an inherited trait? Is it eye color, blood type, spoken language, natural hair texture? Inherited traits such as eye color, blood type, or hair texture, these are passed down through genes, through DNA. And spoken language, on the other hand, is an acquired trait because it's learned from the environment which you grew up in. And so for that reason, we are going to mark answer option C as being the correct response. Let's keep this going. Looks like we have environment next. Let's see what's below here. Oh, great. Okay, so this is important too. We have an energy label, and we are labeling it from bottom to top. So let's start off right at the bottom. We'll have plants. Those are called producers. And then you go up, and we have herbivores, and we call these primary consumers. And then moving on up, and then we have secondary consumers, and then finally right here at the top we have tertiary consumers. Excuse me about that. Actually, let me just back.